I'm really excited here today because we've had such a, yesterday and the afternoon and this morning, everything's just been so controversial. There's been no friction, there's been no fighting. There's been all this friction, there's been all this fighting. So we want a little kumbaya moment. We're just gonna have a nice, quiet, peaceful conversation. We have a steel cage that we're going to be putting down here. And we've given some people in the audience fresh meat to throw in here and start the battle. But, welcome me today. I've got Elisa Gervitz with Green America, Phil Radford from Greenpeace, and this is not Gwen Ruda, Elizabeth Sturken with Environmental Defense Fund. Welcome all of you, and so I'm going to give them a softball to start with, and then we'll have some fun. Elisa, I'm going to start with you. So just give us, what's the mission with Green America, and how do you view corporate partnerships?
So Green America is a green economy advocacy organization. We work on both the supply and demand side of the marketplace to bring economic and marketplace solutions to social and environmental problems. Our key areas of interest are climate, food, finance, and fair labor. And we actually work with corporations in two ways. On the demand side, we reach out to corporations and say, have you considered making these improvements? And if they say, thank you, no, we have been known to mobilize some campaigns. So that's on the demand side. I was at a party recently with someone from formerly with a shoe manufacturer that remembers all that fun from a couple of decades ago. On the supply side, we organize what we call working groups, where we get in the room the entire supply chain to solve the problems, challenges, and pinch points with bringing more sustainable supply to marketplace. Those tend to be long-term commitments. We have a solar supply chain group that's been phenomenal. Google now thinks that we could have solar being half the world's energy by 2025 because we've got such growth rates going on right now. So we tend to work on very long engagements with the entire supply chain. The two that are forming up right now, so that if anybody here has interest in them, we've got an amazing non-GMO supply chain working group going on. We've got the entire supply chain in the working group, and we've got some amazing solutions happening. And we're just starting up a green capital working group to help get long-term capital to sustainable small companies like the one you saw this morning with the mushroom packaging. So if you have interest in either of those, we're at the beginning stages of putting those supply chain working groups together.
Great. So Phil, the mission and how can all these corporations just come up and embrace working with Greenpeace?
Good morning. I'm Phil Radford. I run Greenpeace in the United States. Greenpeace is all about contagious acts of courage. And so one of the reasons that we like working with a set of the companies in this room is because of the sheer amount of courage that it takes to actually lead on these issues and step out on them. Greenpeace has been around, you all know, for over 40 years. We're in 42 countries, 80 people in Indonesia, 400 people in India, 500 people here in the United States. And our theory of change has really evolved in the United States as our democracy or the promise of our democracy has really dwindled. As there's been more corporate money in politics, as folks like the Koch brothers have worked to push voters out of elections, and as the opposition to environmental laws has grown, we've realized that we need to continue to mobilize people to push for legislation, but that ultimately companies have taken a huge amount of power in our country. And that in order for us to win, we're going to need you as partners in pushing for principled solutions. Now, that doesn't mean that we want to partner in an unprincipled way. And what it does mean is that we will lovingly cajole you and push you and talk to you about getting to the high bar of what science requires. And then we'll say, let's partner to pass rules for the laggards in your space.
Okay, so you're not going to be unfurling banners over Congress, the roof of Congress or anything soon?
Top secret.
Congress has snipers. That's tough, That's tough. It's tough.
Elizabeth, let's hear about EDF.
Thanks, John. EDF is all about finding the ways that work. And we've been around since 1967 and are linking science and economics, bipartisan politics, and partnerships to create real environmental results to the world's most pressing challenges. We started out in New York years ago, and our informal motto at that time was "Sue the bastards." So we've come a long way too, and I think early on saw the opportunity in working directly together with companies. We were really the first to do that, where McDonald's was under attack for wasteful practices. It's clamshell. I talk to college students, they don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. And our CEO and McDonald's CEO thought, well, maybe working together might be a better way to create solutions. And so that was the model. We set up some focus on really rigorous results and replicability to change the industry, and also that we don't accept money from the companies we work with directly. And so that has really set the standard, I think, for our corporate partnerships, and we've continued to work with some of the biggest companies like AT&T and FedEx, and I manage our team working with Walmart, and I've got some folks based in Bentonville so we can be there and move at the pace of change with Walmart. So I think corporate partnerships, sadly, I'm surprised to say, it's where the action is. I thought I wouldn't be doing this when I started 17 years ago, but you know what? Government is failing us. And corporate partnerships aren't going to do it alone, but they're going to set the bar high and lead if we push them hard to do so, and then we can get the laws to hopefully follow.
So you circumvented the question I told you I was going to ask you, but I still wanted to ask this question just so people understand how your business works. So you're not a wholly owned subsidiary of Walmart, right?
Well, no, we're an independent voice there and pushing them hard for real results, and I think that's what they're going to be judged on, frankly. We don't take money directly from companies, but we get money from individual benefactors and family foundations, and the Walmart Family Foundation has funded some of the work, not the work that I do, but it's an important part of doing what we do. But I think in the end, it's about achieving results, and I think that's how we're really going to be judged.
So Phil, what about Greenpeace? Where's the money coming from? Is this, secret offshore accounts funding anti-corporate activities? Where's it all coming from?
You're right. Very secret. Greenpeace, like EDF, takes no corporate money, no government money. Most of our money actually comes from individual donors on the streets. So those people that you see on the streets asking you for a monthly contribution,
give them money.
That's 80% of Greenpeace's money globally. It's just small donors like that. Some money from foundations. You can put us in your will. There's easy text on our website. You can rush home and do that right now. But the vast majority is just small donors, folks that really care about the environment, that want a voice that expresses what they value and what they feel, and that will keep us going.
Great. Annalisa?
Well, same thing. Majority of our money comes from very generous individuals all across the country. And we also have a join button on our website, so please come on over. And the usual mix of foundations and events and all that good stuff that all of us nonprofits work really hard to make sure that we can be in the long-term relationships. Because I know, as my partners here all know, that when you enter into a partnership with the company, it's all about setting those milestones and making sure that there's delivery over time.
So I'm trying to think exactly how to phrase this, but one thing, the theme of our event this year is going further faster, right? And yet when Joel presented our State of Green Business report, he said, we're not really doing that. So, how do you answer the question about, and maybe I'll start with you, Elizabeth, that maybe what you're doing is providing cover to companies, so you work with Walmart on a program or something, but it's really providing them cover to not change more core aspects of their business. You know, is that what's happening? Are you providing them an out? You know, I'll work on a couple of packaging things and maybe a slight procurement thing, and then I can run the rest of the business. And, you know, we talked about decoupling yesterday. You know, there's certainly not decoupling. So.
Yeah, I think there's some bigger questions about the level of change that's needed, and we need more of it. Walmart needs to be doing more of it, but I've never seen a company move so fast and be so innovative and work on so many things that really do dive deep. You know, from the little packaging change that makes a huge impact because they sell billions of dollars worth of product, to diving deep. The example I used yesterday on fertilizer, hey, that's something that has huge water quality and greenhouse gas impacts, and they're addressing it across their supply chain and doing more. And so, you know, it makes just common sense to pull the biggest lever you can to create the change. And for us, that's Walmart, just duh. But you know what? Walmart alone isn't going to do it, right? They have to work together with their suppliers. And you know, really link together across industries. I just think there's a bigger systems perspective that we need, and we're seeing that more and more and realizing that. And I think any company that's smart is going to realize that. And that's why, and I was talking yesterday about the Sustainability Consortium. I think that's one way to really reach across many different industries and create that kind of systems level change. They need to do a ton more. We need super aggressive goals. We really need to attack this stuff. We need to have the long-term vision and the short-term actions. So there's so much more to be done. But you know, we should act now. We should do those things that we can do now.
Okay, so I'm going to recontextualize it a little bit for you, Phil. So you have campaigns, some very inventive ones, you know, I mean, although I'm sure you should probably pay the people who make logos for the way that you creatively change them. So, you know, some companies we see you have a campaign against, and then you come out afterwards saying, this is a great company, we're supporting all they do. And then there are other companies who I've heard from in the last couple days who said, we're pushing really hard. We responded to Greenpeace, and yet they're still hassling us. And the technology isn't there for us to get to where they think we should be. And so what do you say to those companies that say, hey, come on, we're doing more than anyone else in our industry, and you're still giving us a hard time?
You know, I think there are a few things. We never really say one company is good, right? We'll say this is good behavior or bad behavior, but we won't endorse a company as Greenpeace. And I think when we say that a behavior is good of your company, it will have more value if we continue to have that kind of a separate relationship in a way. You know, I think we were having a negotiation with a giant company several years ago that is one of the biggest paper products companies in the world. And they said something similar to us. The technology's not there. There's not as much Forest Stewardship Council certified lumber out there. You know, we can't, there's not enough recycled product for us to actually get to what you're asking us to get to. And we said, we get it. So what's your timeline? And let's have a really principled timeline that we agree on. And so, yeah, do we want to force technology? Of course we want to force technology. Do we want to work with you to open up new markets? Of course we want to do that. Will we be reasonable? Yeah, of course we will. But will we always be principled? And will we, you know, always demand that there's a principled solution in line with the science? Yes, we will.
I think some people's definition of reasonable might be different than yours, but we'll
That's
find
for sure.
out. So, Lisa, you know, I think you mentioned working on some GMO projects, which is sort of a safe issue, right? There's no divide.
No controversy there, no.
So, I mean, to me, this issue is just fraught with so much emotion, you know, compared, you know, and I see it a lot like the climate debates. Where are you taking this conversation? Sure. And, you know, have you got some campaigns going on, or it's all kumbaya partnerships? And
so to move a supply chain, it always requires a biodiversity of strategies. We know from nature that the most robust systems are biodiverse. We know from markets that the most competitive markets are the ones that are the most diverse markets are the most competitive and the most innovative. So it's not surprising that NGOs take different steps and strategies with companies. If you look at a supply chain, if you look at any of the sectors of the economy that have actually moved big time, it almost always starts with consumer demand. And you know, our last panel, you heard McDonald's say, we listen to our customers. So consumer demand is a leverage, and that's why organizations like mine, Green America, we do mobilize consumer demand to make sure that what we hear on the ground and what shows up in polling data is actually heard by the companies. So because consumer demand gets things started. Once things get started with consumer demand, it almost always flips over to the most important progress can happen on the supply side. So what's happening right now, for example, I mentioned solar, and I just want to give an example that it's always really important to think about what is the trend and not what can happen tomorrow, but something that I learned from Joel McCower is that it's always about orderly transition. You can move very large systems if you take them one step at a time, but you don't just take one step, you plan the whole set of steps. We just finished an engagement, or I should say we just started an engagement with Hershey that started with a marketplace campaign to make them aware that we can no longer tolerate forced child labor in their cocoa supply chain. It came to a commitment with Hershey that they made a commitment to be certified fully certified in their entire system by 2020, and we meet quarterly to make sure that everything is being, all the targets are being met. And I'm really pleased to say that in 2013, they were right spot on with all of their commitments. In solar, it's really interesting. Those utilities that have the biggest stock price increases last year were the ones with the highest amount of solar and renewables in their system. The ones in the bottom quartile had none. So the long-term profitability, as Martin Luther King said in another context, the arc of sustainability and profitability bends towards sustainability. So with non-GMO, there's a lot of education going on, a lot of campaigns. We've had some enormous victories already this year. Cheerios has agreed to take GMOs out of their yellow box supply chain, Post out of grape nuts. We're sitting with several other major companies at the bargaining table right now and working out deals that watch this space, you'll be hearing about it soon. And our supply chain working group is going just amazing. We have a New York, New England strategy that is, again, working on the supply side with farmers, grain elevator companies, as well as the big consumer product groups, where we're going to be putting tens of thousands of new acres under non-GMO and organic cultivation in the next couple of years. Orderly supply, it's coming to market.
Okay, so Phil, success doesn't come without failure. Right, I mean, if you're not failing, you're not pushing, right? So is there any campaign that you've been involved with where you said, you know, maybe that was a pretty stupid idea? Is there one you said, you know, we probably shouldn't have gone that way with that company?
You know, there's a historical massive screw up that Greenpeace had, the Brent Spar targeting Shell, which there's a professor at Northwestern University, Daniel Diemeyer, who's basically said this invented CSR when Shell was, you know, and it was out of our mistake in a way, but it turned out to be a great mistake. I'm glad we're all in the room. And so Shell was planning to scuttle a massive oil platform in the North Sea. And one of our staff made a small math error and added a 0 to the amount of oil that we thought might be dumped. And this is public, so I can share it. And so our assessment, based on a 0 in the wrong place, was that more oil would be dumped if it were scuttled and sunk than if it were dragged back. And so we went out, we boarded the rig, we had fire hoses shooting at us. People all over the world started boycotting Shell. Shell said, oh my gosh, we need to look at how we actually engage people and engage stakeholders for the first time. And there was a math error behind a lot of Shell's CSR. So that was a mistake. That wasn't, I was not the one behind the Excel spreadsheet at that moment. And that was a couple of years before my time, but that was certainly a very famous Greenpeace mistake.
And Elizabeth, any mistakes? Any
EDF's never made any mistakes at all.
That's awesome.
Well, I live in San Francisco in the land of tech, and if you learn anything, if you hear anything around there, it's, you're going to fail, so fail rapidly and move on, right? And I think we have to have more of that mindset. The example that I'll use with a real failure in a partnership that we had was with Starbucks. And we were redesigning their hot cup. They don't call them disposable cups, they call them hot cups. And came up with this beautiful new design. It had matched the brown of the napkins, and it was just lovely. And because of the monopoly that their paper and cup company had, couldn't implement it. Well, in truth, what they ended up with was a much better solution. Is the little sleeve on the outside instead of the double cupping. And I really think that partnership, which actually ended up being a good partnership together with Starbucks, really set them up to address one of their core impacts, which was coffee, and they worked with Conservation International on that. And so, it set them up for some real leadership in sustainability. And so, it's one of those that, learn from it and move on. And sometimes, you think you've got the right answer, and you just might not have the right answer.
All right, Elaine, I want to go over there and get a couple of questions from our audience.
Sure, no problem. So one question is related to how if government is failing us and business can't do it alone, how are you guys helping businesses to get governments to act? Is it a major focus?
Are any of you working with government, or are you just like, yeah, you know what, they're done?
EDF's working in not just in corporate partnerships, but with government. Obama just announced a great large truck efficiency rule, and that's our team doing that work along with many other folks, right? So, as I said, the corporate partnerships are not going to be enough. You need the government intervention. And I do think the real challenge for us is in working with these companies and partnering with them to get them to address their lobbying and to get them to address what their political actions are, and because the two should not be dichotomous, the two should work together. So it's really a logical next step for me, but it's really hard, and we're trying to figure out how to do that and do more of it, because that's very important, big impact.
So right now, one of our big policy pieces is we're working clean energy victory bonds through Congress that would provide significant new funding for clean energy, because in the orderly transition to the renewable energy market that we need, a big piece of that is investment money. But I also want to say that if you gave me a constrained choice and only picked one, the reason why Green America focuses on marketplace solutions is because if you want rapid and you want big, that's the way to go. So, what you all can do is amazing. I'm going to give you two quick examples. You may have heard last year, after 20 years, in December, the FDA finally passed guidelines, not regulations, on trans fatty acids in food products. By the time they passed that guideline, 75% of the trans fatty acids had already been removed from the supply chain because of the steps that the consumers and businesses took together. Going way back into one that I know is part of Greenpeace's proud heritage as well, is I think, if you go to buy tuna, you will see right on there, dolphin safe tuna. That literally happened overnight when the tuna companies finally decided that they couldn't take the pressure anymore, and they actually did have in place the traceability to allow it. Can you imagine? That was going on 30 years ago. If we tried to get that through Congress, we'd still be at it. So, the power that we all have in working together is absolutely phenomenal. And along with the theme of this conference, we have to go further, faster. And the good news is that now that so much of this ground has been laid in so many sectors of the economy, we can do so much more than we could do even 3 years ago, even 5 years ago. So let's do it.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I have to wrap it up. I know you've got great questions there. They can email them. But the last question I'm going to ask, and just for you, Phil, You are leaving Greenpeace. Joel wrote a nice exit interview with you. So what's your parting shot? Because it doesn't matter anymore. So what do you want to tell everybody from the corporations, other NGOs? Take your last shot.
I think there are a couple of things on trends that are important, kind of addressing your last question. I think one is on climate. It's inevitable that there will be climate legislation. The Republican leadership knows that young Republicans, that across age, across race, across class, across party, everyone cares about climate. So there's the up and coming voters are going to force something on climate, and as clean energy gets cheaper, and as the next generation of voters takes power in both parties, something will flip really quickly. So where are you going to be at that moment in the next 10 years? That's thing number one. I think thing number two is there's a lot of anger at corporations in this country. And there's a lot of anger at companies, and you just need to be aware of that trend, and I'm sure you are. But there's a lot of frustration from folks that see that feel that they have less voice in their government because companies have so much more. And so where are you going to be? To your point, are you going to be doing some green things but lobbying on the wrong side or being a member of ALEC? Are you going to be doing good things like Google on clean energy, but also supporting ALEC, that is, supporting the stand your ground legislation or the anti-clean energy standards or things like that? I think you really need to ask, when things flip in the next 10 years, where are you, what side are you on? Because not only is it inevitable that we will get solutions on climate change, but there's also a lot of frustration with companies, and unfortunately, no matter how good you are, you're lumped in with that. And so how do you differentiate yourself by being on the right side of history quickly?
All right, well, let's thank our panelists for being on the right side of time here.